Good morning. Welcome to our program. We are going to go ahead and get started off with the introductions. We probably have a few more in-person attendees that'll roll in here. We've had some traffic problems around town, but want to be respectful of everybody's schedule. My name is Doug Reeder. I'm the executive chair here at Sterling Seacrest Pritchard, and I was one of the founders in 2003. We are one of the largest privately held independent insurance agencies in the United States, in the southeastern United States. We work in partnership with our clients and community, provide services, solutions, and support customized to today's dynamic marketplace. Our firm has a client-first philosophy and a robust resource platform delivered by almost 300 colleagues across 8 offices in the Southeast. One of our key differentiators is industry verticals with dedicated teams including healthcare, construction, real estate and hospitality, transportation, logistics, nonprofits, technology, and private client risks. We also have a large benefits consulting practice which works across industry groups. We are also broker owned with a common long-term perspective and a commitment to educating and informing, which is manifested in today's. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today as a part of a continued theme of programs that over the last couple of years, we have been speaking about business ownership transition. It's not a secret the baby boom generation is starting to age out of and hit retirement age, and they own the vast majority of small businesses in the United States. So there is an increasing wave of business transitions coming. So we are very excited to have Matt Garrett here with us today to tell us some of the key steps that business owners can take and should consider as they contemplate selling their businesses, whether that be internally or externally. Matt is a managing director with Enclave Advisors here in Atlanta. Enclave is an independent SEC registered investment advisor providing personalized investment counsel, wealth management, and trust and estate planning advice to affluent families and their businesses. Working with executives and family business owners, Matt focuses his attention on all aspects of the wealth planning process. His specialties include family business and succession planning, exit planning, investment management, and charitable planning. Matt has more than 25 years of progressive investment experience, the majority of which was spent serving as an advisor to institutional clients and affluent families. Matt is a graduate of Western Carolina University, an excellent fly fisherman, to which I can attest. And as a recipient of the Certified Exit Advisor designation. Please welcome Matt Garrett.
Thank you, Doug. Pleasure to be with you, and thanks for just allowing me to be here and spend a few minutes talking about exit planning. As Doug mentioned, I do have a credential called the Certified Exit Planning Advisor credential, and that essentially is a credential sponsored by the Exit Planning Institute, which is a group based out of Ohio. They're about 20 years old. And really what we are is a national organization that creates an area where estate planning attorneys, wealth advisors, insurance professionals, business brokers, investment bankers can all gather to talk around how to service and to help family-run business owners with succession planning. So that's exactly what I'd like to talk about today. So let me just see if I can kick things off here. So the topic is how to plan for an exit using value acceleration tools. We work with about 60 families as a firm. We manage today about 1.3 billion for those families. And so very often we will get a phone call that will go something like this. Hey, Matt, we own a business. We're second generation. We don't have a succession plan in place and we have an unsolicited offer. What should we do? And so there's kind of 3 questions that I usually ask, and this is a bit of the punchline, and we'll unpack this, but here are the 3 questions I ask. The first question is, do you understand what your business is worth today? And do you understand the components of how that calculation actually occurs? And you know what the answer oftentimes is? They don't. They've had a conversation with someone at a cocktail party, and they have, in many cases, an unrealistic expectation of what the business is worth. Second question, if you had to sell it immediately, or if you're going to sell it now, what would you like to happen? Would you like to do an business transfer, sell it to your partners? Would you like to take this offer unsolicited? And what maximizes value, right? Third question, and then I guess as part of that second question, and who would help you do that? And what I'm implying there is, who's the team that would help you with selling the business? Do you have a good CPA that also understands tax? A good tax advisor? Thank you. Do you have a good attorney that understands the M&A process that can help you can navigate that? Do you have a wealth advisor that can help you think through what happens when you suddenly have money that you need to put into the market and fund your retirement? Maybe you're 55 years old and have a really long runway ahead of you. So in many cases, they have people, but they don't have the right people. So that's kind of the second thing. Third question, do you have any idea around what is the value of your intangible capital? So you might say, what is intangible capital? And that would be, I would say, all the things that is non-balance sheet. I mean, most business owners can go through their balance sheet and their income statement, and you derive your multiple of how you sell a business from that. What they haven't spent enough time on is, what are all the other intangible aspects of the business? Your staff, are they committed? What happens if you have a heart attack as a business owner? Do you have someone that can step in and fill the void? What if you're the rainmaker that all the clients call you first? Who do they call then, right? Do you have processes and procedures that are repeatable, that you can train new staff as they come in? All those things ultimately add up to another component of how you calculate value, which we'll dig into today. So I'm often asked, what is exit planning in like an easy definition? And it's simply connecting all the dots for a business owner and the owners of the business beyond maybe the principal, with all the key components of what an exit would look like, making sure you maximize value. And then secondly, make sure that you understand, is the business ready to transition, and is it attractive for an owner? And there's a lot of reasons why a business may not be ready, and maybe it's not attractive. And we'll dig into all that as well. So Doug, you mentioned something that's exactly kind of one of the punchline of what I was going to say earlier, and that is 90% of businesses in North America are privately held. 90% of businesses in America are owned by individuals or families, in some cases second and third generation. So business owners have a really big challenge in that, in many cases, not always, they have spent their entire working life building a business. They're super proud of it. They're tied up in the business. Their identity, in some cases, is tied up in the business. So I found oftentimes business owners don't like the word exit planning or even succession planning, because it implies, who am I going to be after I sell it? And that is a big concern. So dealing with the personal factors around, what would it look like to sell the business? And then what do I do for the next period of time in my life, my next season, is a really real reality. And in some ways, I spend a lot of my time managing money for families, but I also spend a lot of time as a behavioral therapist talking about all of those things, and in some cases, the dysfunction that goes along with it. So let's talk a little bit about a study that was done a couple of years ago that I think is helpful. So the Exit Planning Institute for the last 10 years has done a study nationally, and they break it down by city. In 2018, we did a study here in Atlanta, and we talked with about 300 small and medium-sized business owners around a lot of questions. And we ultimately came up with a number of really interesting things. The first is 76% of owners plan to transition over the next 10 years. Just think about that. 3/4 of all businesses plan to transition some way. Half of those business owners have no transition plan in place. 70% of businesses that are put on the market do not sell. I didn't believe that when I first saw that, but that is true. A lot of folks will go out to the market, they'll find out suddenly there's all these issues, and they'll just say, there's no way I'm selling at that price, and they'll go back. In some cases, they'll come back and say, how do I find someone that can help me grow this business? How do I create additional value? Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right. Yeah, not the first time. And they'll continue to come back and learn. 30% of family-owned businesses transition to the second generation, and only 12 survive to the third. And so that's a real reality that business owners face. Yeah.
Any way to know how many are really serious, or it's just talking like, yeah, I think I want to leave here in decade? Any way to know? Is there any breakdown of that? Because, a lot of times when we're working with families too, guys, I think I'm probably going to leave like sometime in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
It's hard to know how real that is because they're filling out a survey. So on the survey, they can check one of 5 boxes, and it kind of tells when, do you think you're going to sell in the next 1 year, 2 to 3, 3 to 5, 5 to 7, 7 to 10. And so just based on that statistical data across the country, that's the number we get. But I get your point. Everyone knows that at some points there's an eventuality that they have to sell. But the reality is, and I've got data here in just a minute, it'll show, we have an aging population. Business owners, many of which started kind of coming out of the baby boomer generation, are getting older, and they're getting to a place where we all slow down. I'm feeling this personally. We all start to slow down a little bit, and we all at some point want to do other things. So a part of my point is you've got to start early, and kind of the worst time to think about selling is when you get an unsolicited offer, because you probably haven't. There's probably a lot of things where you're not ready that will drive down your value. Yeah, so this is part of the same survey data. You'll see here, over 2/3 are between 50 and 70. So aging population. Are you familiar with your transition options? Again, 2/3 tier, 70% are either unsure or not familiar with all transition options. There are 8 transition options a business owner can think through, and I won't rattle them all off, but they could go public through an IPO. They could have an offer from a third party. They could do an intergenerational transfer. They could simply liquidate the business. I've seen that. Someone that thought they had a business that was worth something, reality was their business, because they hadn't done any planning and they had a health event, they ultimately had to just liquidate, actually selling inventory down. So an orderly liquidation of the business could be an exit strategy. It could be the best one. Hopefully not. That's really typically not, but that could be the case. Hey, Michael. This is really telling as well. Who do you see as your most trusted advisor? This is several hundred survey folks. What really struck me is about half of the overall responses were essentially someone other than who should be a trusted advisor for you, right? It's either your spouse, I don't want to take away from spouses, or other. I don't know what other is. 32% are other people that is their most trusted advisor, a friend, who knows. But really, they should, their core team should be a banker, an accountant, a lawyer, a financial advisor, a business broker, a valuation person, folks that can really help speak into the business. So that's concerning. And so part of what I do is help families put together a team. And the key is to do that 3 to 5 years before you're ready to sell, not when you have to sell. Okay, so we talked about what exit planning is. Let's talk, so exit planning is the overall. Master planning is kind of the conversation. The value acceleration will be the actual way we do it. And I'll talk about value acceleration in a minute. But master planning is kind of 3 things. Thinking about how do we maximize the transferable value of the business. And there's a lot of ways we can do that. We can benchmark. We can take a look at where we rank based on our peers. Really the goal would be there to be kind of in best in class, and we'll get into that in just a minute. Really, where I spend day to day is the personal financial planning piece. A lot of business owners have an unrealistic expectation of value, and in many cases, the business will be 80 to 90% of their overall net worth. So think about that. If you think your business is worth more than it is, you're about to retire, and you haven't done the planning to say, can I live another 30 years on whatever I may get, which may be lower than I thought? That's kind of a bad outcome. So, digging into having a good wealth advisor or financial planner, financial advisor that can go through the retirement planning piece. I mean, we have fabulous software that in about an hour, I can ask a series of questions and I can come up with a pretty tight recommendation for you as it relates to kind of all the inputs you need to think about. So a lot of business owners just don't do that. They don't do it until they think they have to do it, right? They put all their time, energy, finances into the business. And then the third piece I've already spoke to a little bit, kind of a third leg of the stool for a successful exit is to have given some thought in advance to what does life look like after you're out of the business. And this idea, Hunter, you were kind of alluding to this, a lot of business owners sell and then when they're surveyed afterwards say, I regret selling. Does anybody know that? And know people like that? I do. I mean, they either sold for less than they should have because they didn't know enough and they learned a lot during the process. Or I'll give you a real life example. I have a client that owned about 40 Pizza Huts all over the Southeast. They were approached. They went into a sales process. The aggregator was the buyer was a business aggregator of those nationally, and they thought they had a certain value of the business. And what ended up happening was this person came in, they got their balance sheet, they got their income statement, and they started just beating up their EBITDA, driving down the value that they negotiated in advance. So they made an offer, ultimately ended up selling for less because they had some really sophisticated CPAs that were able to really work on that balance sheet. That's just a bad outcome. So, so ultimately the business owner, what do you think? He regrets that transaction, wish he would have done it differently. I love this chart. So this is 3 charts stacked on top of each other. Our personal time chart is as we age, there is diminishing return in our ability, our energy, our intellectual horsepower and capacity. We all like to think that we have a straight line all the way across, but statistics says we don't, right? It's different for different people, but we all have a little bit of a downward sloping line. I know that's depressing, but it's the reality. Businesses also have a life cycle. Products come and go. You may have a really fantastic product, competitors come in, and the business starts to diminish. Oftentimes businesses, you've probably heard of the concept of the S curve. They'll reach and then have the next one, and then it dips. But in some cases, they have a one product life cycle, and as it starts to dip down, that business diminishes because it gets more competitive. And then thirdly, we have business cycles. The private markets ebb and flow. Currently it's red hot in the transition process. There's a lot of buyers, a lot of capital. Private equity is trying to put money to work. There's a lot of transactions happening. But the question here is, when is the right time to sell if this were a person? And you might say, out here, because you want to maximize the timing. I would argue maybe when you're 58 years old is the right time to sell, because your cycle is still moving up. You still have a long time to go in retirement, and private markets are working for you. But that chart looks different for everyone, but giving that some advanced thought is really important. Okay, so some of the key drivers for owners to think about. The first thing is they have to think about is there's a certain construct within their value systems that in some ways are competing with each other. Think about it. You're a business owner. Your aunt or uncle works in the business with you. They're an owner. The CEO of the business is a non-owner, a non-family member, but he also has ownership. You have all kinds of dysfunctional and competing relationships that you have to care about and try to get a decision made as it relates to sales that benefits all 3 of those conflicting value systems. And then other drivers from a success standpoint are, how do you align for yourself as owner your personal needs and wishes, your health, all the things that you care about with the financial issues? Have you done the retirement planning? Have you looked at risk management? Or have you made sure that you're bulletproof from a risk management standpoint? In other words, for example, do you have a buy-sell agreement that if you and your partner suddenly split, maybe he's hit by the proverbial bus, that there's a transition plan in place? And I could share a number of examples where that's not the case. And I bet, Hunter, I bet you could too. And then from a business standpoint, have you really dug into all the details? And we'll go through this in just a minute, but have you tried to align all those such that when you make a decision, you're able to kind of help in all those ways? Yeah.
It's probably his question, but when you're working with clients, it's been my experience that most of the time they don't know. If you have to say, like, hey, Matt, have you really thought through how much income you're going to need in retirement and all the things that could put that at risk and so on and so forth?
Yeah.
Knowing how thorough you guys are, you guys help folks sort of think through that, map that out, do the math on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We can do that we can get as granular as taking an individual portfolio and doing an income projection by asset to give them an idea of kind of where they are now and where they need to be. There's really good what's called Monte Carlo simulations, and they'll actually run about 1,000 different tests on a portfolio, and we can include in that and a liquid asset like a business. We can use the valuation person to come up with the value of that business and pull that in there, where we can really say, based on your spending needs, your longevity potential, based on your family history and all
the other stuff you have,
can go in there, all the other assets you have, exactly. In some cases, we can even build in charitable planning as well.